Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio program, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. Our program today is called The Power of Questions. Since the earliest days of human communication, this has been a very important part of how we figure out what to do in the world. Our earliest survival depended on asking the questions of what's beyond the horizon, what's over the mountain, what's across the ocean, is there something there maybe that could be dangerous or maybe something wonderful over there? And then, of course, when we get to the point where we're running out of food, we're wondering, like, what's across the ocean? Is there something there that could be life-sustaining? So from the very earliest days of our human civilization, we asked questions to ensure our very survival.
It's really interesting to me, this topic, this whole idea that speech goes in two directions, essentially, or maybe more to the point, the brain works in two ways. It can output information, and we talk, or it can wish to absorb information, which we usually describe as listening. So asking questions, I think, is part of a listening process. And if we think about this is a time to soak it up, not to defend what you already know, or think you know, or point out the differences and the errors in the ideas of somebody that happens to disagree with you, but just sit back and soak it up. I think it was Aristotle that is known for having said something about the mark of real intelligence is being able to consider something you don't really believe in.
Yeah, to hold, at the same time as you're holding the thought that this is what I know is true, I'm willing to consider, to look at this impossible thing, this other thing. That stretches the mind. There is some intelligence in that. Asking those kinds of questions really is an expansion process for the mind. In any learning situation where generally you have like a teacher and a student, a mentor and a pupil, questions is really the most important part of the process. From the person who's giving the information, it's essential they ask questions to make sure the person they're giving the information to is getting it. The only way they can really discover if this person is getting it is to ask questions. And then from the person who is getting the information, the student, it's very important to ask clarifying questions. Am I getting it? Am I getting it right? Is this what you mean to say? Am I understanding you the way you mean to be understood? In interaction between human beings, asking questions is very important for clarification, for making sure we're on the same wavelength. But there's a whole other area of asking questions that we have to take a look at, too, and that is in your own world, not with other people, but just with yourself. In terms of yourself, there's two kinds of questions you ask. You ask the questions like about out there, like about what I don't know. You ask questions like, I want to know about that. I'm curious. And curiosity sparks me to want to know something about something that I don't know out there. I'm afraid of something, so I want to learn about it. Understanding helps me be less afraid of things. So there's stuff out there I don't know, and I want to know, so I ask about it. I ask, what is it, or who is it, or why is it? I ask all kinds of questions. But there's another kind of question we ask, and that's where we actually do know the answer, and that's where we ask ourselves, where we close our eyes and take a deep breath and go into a real calm, safe, peaceful place and ask ourselves questions we do know the answer to, like, what do I want the most? Or what would make me most happy? Or what's the right path for me to take? Or is this the right thing for me to do? Is that those questions where the only right answer could be found within oneself by asking yourself questions, by doing what's called introspection or reflection or meditation or contemplation or prayer, by closing your eyes, relaxing, getting out of the outside world, moving into the inside world, asking questions of yourself where you do know the answer. So in interacting with other people, we ask questions to find things out, to clarify, to see what they know, see what we know. But in interacting with ourselves, we ask questions to clarify what we don't know out there and to find out and discover what we do know in here.
Yeah, what we know but we're not conscious of.
Well said.
Isn't it funny how realizing something new when you introspect and you're studying the nature of the self and your relationship to the world and to life and the existential questions, when you do that reflection, at least this is my experience of it, that when I realize something new about me, it feels often like remembering. Like I really did know it all along on some level of awareness, but it was veiled. And I wasn't able to really receive it until all of a sudden it became clear, and I got that there's a feeling that goes with it, too, in your body that's, whoa, I get it, I understand now. And it's not a decision you make, A or B. It's just like a realization. Like, yeah, it feels like a memory, like you really knew this all along.
Right. There is some memory of this somewhere inside of you that you can pull on, that you're not conscious of, but you're bringing it up from deep inside. I remember one of my great experiences in therapy. I was in therapy and working on daddy issues. You know, my father deserted the family when I was a kid, and the therapist was asking me about, I was 12 years old, and asking me, like, how did I feel when I was 12 years old when that happened? And I said, I don't know. And he said, I love this. He said, well, what if you could know? And all of a sudden, it's like, bam, that particular question, the way, what if you could know? Like, I had permission to guess. I had permission to be wrong. I had permission to go for it. I had permission to, like, just see what blurted out of my mouth. All of a sudden, that question opened up floodgates of information about what this 12-year-old knew consciously when I was 25 or 30 and I was going through this therapy, but wasn't remembering. And then all of a sudden, the permission to open it up. Asking the right question is so important. I was experiencing this with my wife some time back. We were in a situation where in the past I would have said, are you uncomfortable? When she looks stressed out. Are you uncomfortable? And I read something that clicked for me, and I figured instead, and I did this instead, I said, am I doing something that's making you feel uncomfortable? And boy, was that a better question to ask. Because otherwise I'm saying, like, what's wrong with you? And instead, now I'm saying, well, am I doing something? There's something that I can change or fix to make this better. It changed everything.
And it's so important to realize, I think, that is a very powerful program that only at first glance might appear to be an inferior position, like you're deferring to your wife. You're not standing in your power. I would disagree. I think if that's reflected upon long enough, the yielding, if you will, the appearance of deliberately submitting yourself to your wife's will, it's a very powerful thing. That's leadership, it seems to me. And if both people are respectful and deferential in that way, then you're both taking turns leading the relationship in a unified direction.
Yeah, that's really an important key. So asking questions of each other is a real key in a relationship. How important is this to you is one of the most important questions you can ask in a relationship. Oftentimes what we have is you want something and your partner wants something, and so you argue and you fight and you try and, win. You try and, like, get what you want at the expense of them getting what they want. It was like looking to be right or to win this argument or to get this thing. But if instead you start with, well, okay, this is what I want and this is what you want, how important is this to you? And she says, oh, well, on a 1 to 10, I'd say this is pretty important. It's like an 8 to me. And I go, well, gosh, it's really only a 2 to me. What are we even talking about here? Well, go ahead and have it. It's much more important to you than it is to me. By asking the question, how important is this to you, it changes everything. All of a sudden, it's not black or white. It's like in this rainbow of possibilities, what color are you and what color am I and which color is brighter, It changes everything because it's not about win or lose now. It's about finding a way for the relationship to win.
I want to talk more about asking questions of one's self to better know the self. This is our whole series, finding yourself, your true, authentic, higher self, in paradise, in a relaxed and safe state of mind, a place of perfect peace. And we've talked in the past, and we'll describe again in the future, from brain function to the frequency of brain waves and brain chemistry, all that's involved in that and the reasons for that. But suffice to say, the best place to ask questions of yourself is in this paradise, this alpha, meditative, introspective, contemplative state of mind, a reflective state, if you will.
Because if you ask in your normal consciousness, the answer is going to come out of fear rather than out of love.
Or it's often a repetition of what you've been saying to yourself. I mean, the worst arguments are the ones we have with ourselves. It's amazing how much in relationships is really just an outpicturing of an internal dialogue or argument that's going on inside your head. Proof again that we're not our thoughts, because which you'd have to take only one side then. You are the awareness of your thinking. And again, it's a matter of degree. But before we go back to that, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little more about the questions we ask of the world around us and the fear we often have in school or in life, at work, wherever, of asking a question for fear that will appear to be stupid. Now, I know this was a big deal for me in school, and I was always a pretty good student, and yet I was always conscious of the fact that if I'm going to ask a question, others are going to judge me. Again, it's my fear. I don't think most people really cared that much.
Yeah, but sometimes it's even hard enough to raise your hand with the answer, much less to look smart. That's hard. Much harder to raise your hand with a question. And to appear to look stupid.
It always was for me, and I remember early, it must have been freshman, maybe sophomore year of college, that I made a decision that if I didn't understand something, there was so much at stake here. The tuition of college, the fact that I had only a student deferment and I was going to be drafted the day I graduated. Actually, it was 2 days after I graduated, as it turned out. And being the oldest of the siblings and all this responsibility on me, I thought, boy, if you don't understand it, you better figure it out. It's like, is this going to be on the test? Those kinds of questions you're thinking about in grade school. I wonder if this will be on the test. Well, there's something to that. In other words, I know these details. I'm reading the textbook. I'm listening to the lecture, but I haven't yet really assembled the big picture, the overarching concept. What I feel I need is some kind of scheme to snap all these little pieces into, and then it'll be easy to make sense out of it. Otherwise, I've just got this big mountain of data or information and not really sure what to do with it. I decided to ask the teacher, and I decided that maybe if I was afraid to raise my hand in class, what I do is go to the professor or the instructor after class, catch him or her on the way out the door with just a real brief, concise, well-thought-out question that would help me get that bigger picture. And damn it, it worked. It got me through school. I'm remembering it now. It is strong, a big part of my past. That decision to ask questions and risk somebody saying that that's evidence that you're stupid. The only person that was saying that was me, to myself. That was my anxiety. That was my issue. And realizing it set me free.
Yeah, I think it starts for all of us early in our lives, in our relationship with our parents and the word why. How that gets dealt with early in our lives determines how we do with questions, I think. Because every kid asks. I mean, and some parents are really wonderful at first, but after a while it starts to wear on them, why? And it gets to the point where even though they try to keep that smile on their face, they start to get irritated, their breathing gets shallower, and they're getting tenser, and their body is tightening up when the kid keeps asking why, and the kid senses this, like a puppy dog. It knows when, just like a puppy dog knows, a little kid knows when mommy or daddy's getting frustrated. And all of a sudden asking questions might not be so cool anymore. It might not be such a good idea. Now, some parents do really great with this. They find a way to, if they can't answer the question right now, they find a way to make a game out of finding it out later. My mom and dad were very good with this because, well, they had the opportunity to be. They were the first generation of parents that could ever actually say to a kid, look it up. They didn't have the World Book when they were growing up. They had to go to the library to get information. But I actually, in my bedroom, had this wonderful series of books. And anytime I had a question like, why is the sky blue? They really didn't know why the sky was blue. They could say to me, look it up. I was always encouraged to look it up. I was always encouraged to go take my curiosity and find the answer. I never got much of that, quit asking, don't bother us anymore kind of feeling. And I think that was a wonderful feeling in our life. However, I, as probably most children, did experience it from school teachers. There were some school teachers, if you were like the smart kid and you sat in the front row and you raised your hand a lot and asked a lot of questions that took it beyond where the teacher wanted to take it, that were more in-depth. Like, well, why did people decide that black people are worse than white people? And they didn't want to go into all of a sudden you get like those same negative vibes from the school teachers. Like, you can't take me off my track. I quit bothering me with these questions. So we learn that asking questions sometimes gets us in trouble. We've got to find a way in our lives to ask questions that do the opposite, that get us out of trouble, because questions really do get us out of trouble. That's the best way to get out of trouble, is to start asking questions. And the best way to connect with other human beings, I think, is asking questions. It's like the secret to making friends is, be truly interested in other people. And the way you show that you are truly interested is you ask questions.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's Dale Carnegie, and I think Norman Vincent Peale, too, all those early positive thinking guys, really understood the importance of being genuinely, sincerely interested in other people. You don't just ask the question. Like a child is egocentric. They want to know because they want to know. They're not asking questions about you or your opinion of things, really. They want the facts. Just tell me straight out what's going on here. What's this about? I need to know. But if the question, whatever it's about, you, me, the world around us, is based in, I really care what you think, and we're back to that listening idea, and I'm going to listen to your response. That's why I ask the question. It is a quality of leadership, I think, and what's come to be called in the field of emotional intelligence, relationship management. And it requires empathy. I mean, you can't manage another person's feelings, help them feel good, right, if you haven't been able to do that for yourself. So Dan Goleman points out in Emotional Intelligence that it starts with self-awareness, being aware that you feel in your body, and then you have thoughts about how you feel that affect the feelings. Self-awareness is one. Number two is managing that, all right? Learning to relax, basically, manage stress and anxiety, to become calm, and now interpret and understand your feelings in that calm state. If we're disturbed, it's very difficult to do. And then 3 and 4 is being aware of other people's feelings, empathy, and for managing other people. So first you gotta, like anything else, take care of yourself first, get the pony in front of the cart, get your own emotions managed, get the skill, and now you're able to make a contribution. I think it's Maya Angelou who said, people may forget, or I think she actually wrote, people are likely to forget what you say and what you do, but they'll probably never forget how you made them feel. And questions, I care about you, I'm interested sincerely, I'm going to listen to what you have to say, certainly accomplishes that.
Yeah, if you use the questions and actually listen to the answers. I remember one time, many times I've been interviewed by talk show hosts, doing radio and TV and stuff like that. And one guy, there were several that were closest, but one guy had a list of like 10 questions. And he asked the first question, and I gave this answer and then the next question, nothing to do with anything I was just saying. It's time to go to the next question. He didn't hear a word I said. All he was doing was like preparing his mind to ask the next question. It had nothing to do with what I was talking about, so it didn't matter if he listened to what I said. To me, you can use questions in a very inappropriate way like that, but for example, when I remember listening to you on the radio, you might have had some questions in your mind you were going to ask this guest, but when your guest went off somewhere, you followed along, you went where they went, and you allowed their answer to create your next question. Now, if you're listening, then your next question is dependent upon their previous answer. It's not the next question you thought you were going to ask.
Right. And the difference, obviously, is the difference between these two disjointed conversations filled with non sequiturs and giant leaps, and something that's really beautifully woven and integrated into a nice pattern, a mutual exploration of an idea.
Right, and instead of getting this little basic concept of these 10 questions they asked and nothing in depth, they could have used their questions to take me deeper and deeper and deeper into something and really got something that was much, much more worthwhile.
You know, you talked about looking it up, and today we can Google that we've gone from World Book or Encyclopedia Britannica and the library down on the corner to the Internet. Well, there's a certain credibility that we give books because we figure they wouldn't be published, they wouldn't be these nice volumes if they weren't true, right?
Well, that's if you don't read fiction.
Well, I was gonna say, basically I'm talking about textbooks, yeah. So I think in most cases it's true. You can assign a certain credibility or believability, credence to a book that's published by some big New York publisher, right? London, Paris, something like that. And we rely on that. But the Internet, anybody can say whatever they want. This is the printing press move toward anarchy. And I think it's a good thing. I like the untamed, Wild West nature of the Internet. But it requires us as consumers to be aware that anybody can say anything and that not all of these postings, these clusters of text and information, are as credible as the other. And you have to make that determination by asking questions. And the trick, I think, that I learned in school as a journalist is to deliberately seek out diverse and antagonistic information. You look deliberately and purposefully for accounts of, let's say, some current event, some news item, that disagree. Because in addition to this account and that account, there's this whole middle of disagreement. Well, then it could be a third way, right? Or maybe a fourth way, or anything is possible. Now, it's like that old proverb about the man that wears two watches never knows what time it is. But this is a good thing. And it stimulates the imagination. So now you're questioning the world and questioning yourself. You see, it's really a nice process of inquiry and using the power of questions to empower yourself.
People ask themselves, why should I ask myself questions? I already know the answer. Well, yeah, on some level you do know the answer, but you're not conscious of it. There's a lot of very wonderful questions you can ask yourself, and just use, for example, the power of the word important. The mind understands the importance of the concept important, so ask questions with the word important, like ultimately leading to the question, who am I, which is the ultimate question. Start with, who's important to me? And then, what is important to me? And then where is important to me? What places in the world are important to me? And then how am I going to use this information about myself to make myself better? And why is it important to understand myself? There's lots of wonderful questions you can ask yourself that, yeah, on some level you must know the answer to, but you haven't asked, and so you haven't gotten clear on what the answers are. It's a wonderful exercise in self-exploration and introspection, just to sit quietly and ask yourself what's important to you. What in the world is important to you, and why is it important to you? And discovering that about yourself leads you to more information about the ultimate question, the who am I, why am I here, what am I for, what am I supposed to do in the world? Those kind of questions about yourself, about your happiness, about your passions, you can't find the answers to those outside of yourself. You have to sit quietly and go inside, because when you try and ask those questions in a nervous, anxious, confused, agitated kind of state, you get answers coming from the ego mind, from the fear-based mind that's saying, well, just make sure you don't go here and make sure you don't do that. And it's all about moving away from what you don't want. And that seems intuitively like a good idea, moving away from what you don't want, but only in real danger. Without real danger, it's much more important to be quiet and move toward what you do want. And when you quiet your mind, you can ask the questions about what do you want, what do you want the most, that you can only really get the answers to when the fear is quieted, when fear mind, the ego mind, kinds of moves into a state of abeyance and steps into the background, sits in the passenger seat, doesn't need to drive the car.
Yeah, I think that's a real good point. Wasn't it Descartes that put those W's together, the 6 W's of who, what, when, where, why, and then how, I guess, as a W on the back end?
Yeah, it might have been. I don't know for sure.
Mr. I think, therefore I am. I think it's Cartesian, basically. The questions had always been out there. Nobody really ever wrote about them in this concise way, putting them all together and saying, look, gang, there's 6 W's here. Ask these questions and gather all that information. That's a good starting point.
Isn't that sort of basic journalism?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think cops use it.
Yeah.
And I think anybody that's investigating, junior high school science student is going to learn to do the same thing. How to explore. Again, it's one thing to learn information in a book. But what about, and you've already said this, what about learning stuff you don't know or know that you know? Totally brand new stuff. I don't even know what I'm studying. I'm a scientist, and I know that most of what there is to be known has not yet been discovered, right? Because we really don't know. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We don't even know what light is. We don't know what gravity is. We don't know what electricity is. I mean, not really. We have a sense of how it works. We understand its behavior. But what is it really? Light, even visible light. Is it a particle or a wave? Sometimes it acts like both. Pretty strange stuff. So we take these things for granted. It's like geometry. Remember, they said, look, I can't prove these 5 theorems at the very beginning, first day of class, but if you'll accept these, I can create a really cool system for you. Right? A little strong on the right angles, but nevertheless, plain geometry. And again, they just acknowledged up front, we can't explain these first 4, but if we assume this is true, then this certainly seems to work. So that's the box inside which we live. And questions, the power of questions to break out of that box, to say, okay, if the universe has an edge, then I want to know what's on the other side of that, right? That's just human curiosity. So put it into a form of language called the question, and then sit back and listen to the answer without being defensive. So much energy gets wasted in so many different ways. It could be, again, science and engineering, or it could be the way you relate to your spouse. So much energy is wasted often in defending a position that you may wish to consider doesn't really need defending. How about putting that energy into looking for a third way, or a fourth option, or a fifth point of view, or a sixth way of looking at things, right? Wonder. Be questioning. A questioning person, I think, is a real leader.
So I want to know stuff because I don't know it. I want to understand stuff that I do know because I don't understand it. I ask questions to clarify. I ask questions to increase my knowledge base. I ask questions to get on a better wavelength with another human being and to understand where they're coming from. I ask questions for a lot of reasons, but the most important part about asking questions is listening for the answer. Whether you're asking someone else or you're asking yourself, it's got to be a step in the process. If you just keep asking questions but you don't listen for the answer, there's no value in that. And that's what a lot of people do. They ask questions and they keep asking, but they never stop to be quiet enough to actually hear the answer.
Like, how are you? I mean, our daily back and forth. People can't call a radio talk show without saying, how are you? And the screener says, now, when you get on the air, be sure you don't say, how are you?
Because the last 12 people said, how are you?
That's right, and it's a waste.
And he's sick and tired of saying fine, or better and better.
And we're wasting time here. That takes 8 or 10 seconds to do that dance. So just say, thank you for taking my call. You ready? Because when they answer the phone, that's what you're going to say.
Thank you for taking my call.
And they get on the air, and the first thing they say is, "Hey, how are you?" Like, what a question. You don't care, really. You're just buying time to create that psychic hookup, I think.
Yeah, and fine is almost never a true answer. No. You know what I mean? Like, what does fine even mean anyway?
You want the long story? You want the Reader's Digest version?
Right. Do you even want to know? I mean, do you even want to know? A lot of times we ask questions we really don't even want to know the answers to, and you know, just in a perfunctory way. I think one of the biggest problems we have with questions when we learn early in life that it can get us in trouble is we get afraid to ask them. We get fearful, and we take the position that if it comes from authority, it must be right. And we fail to do something Timothy Leary told us all to do, question authority. I think one of the greatest questions we can ask is, why is this rule a rule? Why do we do this way? Why is it handed down from great-great-grandma down to me just because it was good then? Is it still good now? Asking and not accepting, just asking, like, why is it this way, instead of just going with, because it always was this way. Because I said so. It's the least satisfying answer any kid could ever get. So ask questions to see if it still works that way anymore. You know, there's this old story about this little girl who sees her mother take the pot roast and cut off the two ends and then put it in the pot and start to cook it. And the little girl says, "Why do you cut off the two ends of the pot roast?" And the mom says, "Well, because that's how you do it." You know, like, well, let's ask my mom. Let's ask Grandma. She knows. So they go, "Hey, Grandma, why do you cut up?" And then Grandma says, "Well, that's how it's done." And everybody, my mom, who's in the old age home now, 97 years old, but that's how she did it. Let's go ask Great Grandma. So they go ask Great Grandma, and Great Grandma says, "Oh, my pan wasn't big enough." You know, it's like, but it becomes like given this accepted way. It's the way it's passed down. You know, just because something has been accepted to be true doesn't mean it's true. There is still a flat Earth society out there, actually, that still believes that the Earth is not round at all. So ask questions to question authority. Ask questions to better understand yourself. Ask questions to show people you genuinely are interested in them. Ask questions to be a leader. Lots of wonderful reasons to ask questions. But when you ask questions of yourself, listening is equally as important as when you ask questions of other people. And that listening takes place best when you get out of stress and move into a state of focused passion, the state we call paradise.
Yeah, it's the higher self you're listening for, you see. Then you can assume that position, but first you've got to hear it. First you've got to remember, oh yeah, I have a better nature. Hold on. I'm getting pulled down because of my stress and anxiety into the egoic self. And that's the separated persona. Very defensive, very negative, very frightened, always afraid it's under attack. And if you have that critical voice inside your head, you can blame your parents because you remember hearing that criticism as a child. But that's really your voice. That's the ego. And that's its job, is to keep you safe in what appears to the ego, anyway, to be a dangerous world. I mean, there's all these separated forms, these parts of life that seem not to be you. But the higher self has an elevated perspective, and it sees that these apparently separated parts are really all units of one big thing. And that perspective allows you to orchestrate your life in a really beautiful way. Instead of being the helpless victim, the target, or the effect, you can be cause. But the questioning process is where it all begins. I wonder if I've gotten pulled down. You know, the ego even has an ability to disguise itself as the higher self. This, in the esoteric community, is called glamour. This is where a celebrity decides, I really am better than other people. And this happens to swamis and gurus and the heads of various religions, too. They start thinking, yeah, I can bend the rules a little bit because I am more enlightened. And so
Even just particularly attractive men and women do this. Just really good-looking people just do this.
Yeah. No question about it. That's the polar nature of the individual, this lower egoic fear-based self. And then the elevated perspective we're talking about, finding that self in this paradise, alpha brainwave level, that's got the more complete holistic perspective. That sees the gestalt to the bigger picture. And it's more harmonized. It doesn't see everything as separate and antagonistic. It starts to see the and instead of the or, and the unity in addition to the diversity, but in an integrated or harmonious fashion. That's the middle between unity and diversity. Between those poles is this third element, like the magnetic field around a bar magnet, and that's harmony between unity and diversity. The heart of that is harmony. Isn't that a nice trinity? Unity, harmony, diversity, and it's all true.
And from different perspectives, it remains true. The way we discover truth is to ask questions, and I think one of the most wonderful questions is I wonder, followed by whatever. Whenever you move into the state of I wonder, you move out of that stress mode into that relaxed focus mode that we're going to move into, this alpha state, this wonderful state, the I wonder mode, the wide-eyed fascination, the wow mode. It's such a wonderful mode to move into. And moving into that mode, we can listen to our responses from our higher self more effectively. It's just a great place to go, a great place to be. Ask the questions, listen for the answers, and if you don't know what questions to ask yourself, what questions would be best to ask, and you'll find the answer there. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, let it out slow, move your body into a real comfortable position, balanced over your shoulders, maybe move your head back and forth a little. Another deep breath. As you release, let your mind move from where you are to a place inside of peace. Let your mind move into a place of paradise, of perfect peace.
Allow yourself to remember a time when you felt really, really safe and warm, maybe even cozy safe. And relaxation comes with that. You can feel that now, safe and relaxed. And of course, when you create and sense that letting go feeling in your body and you relax, you feel even more safe. And feel yourself even now going deeper and becoming even more relaxed. So safe and so relaxed that you can begin developing a wonderful life by filling your life with wonder, and begin to wonder about how you feel right now. Resist the tendency to go to the past or concern yourself with the future. Just how do you feel in your body right now? Move your awareness from your head, where it most likely resides, down into your tummy. You can feel a little deeper than that, down toward the base of the spine. You can also feel the emotional aspirations to love that lift you into the upper areas of the core of your being. Feel effortlessly, wondering how you feel, what you feel, where you feel. And maybe even, if you're willing to really listen, why you feel this way.
Why do you feel the way you feel? Ask yourself. And then wait. And listen for the answer. Don't cogitate. Just listen for the answer. Let it flow on through, as if it's coming from somewhere else, not even right from you, like it's being channeled or being brought through in some miraculous kind of way. Just listen for the answer and let it have it say. Ask yourself, why do I feel the way that I do? And wonder if there's other ways that you could feel too. Ask yourself why, and then listen and hear an answer that comes from love and not comes from fear. It does not come from fear when you're relaxed down here. The answer allows you to rise above any fear that you feel. You allow that to heal, and you know that your answer comes from love. Ask, why do I feel the way I feel? And listen, and you'll be clear. The answer that comes will come from love and not from fear.
And so bring this wonder with you. Simply decide to effortlessly maintain your sense of wonder, your aspiration to question, your capacity, your willingness and ability to explore the power of questions and wonder, first about yourself, that you might better empathize and then understand others without judgment, without prejudging, without bias, because it comes from an awareness that what the self describes the self. And as the ancient Talmud said, we see the world not as it is so much as we see it as we are. So the wisdom is to know thyself. No sage ever admonished you to know others. Once you understand yourself, questioning, wondering, sincerely interested in the truth of your essence, then from a place of love, harmony, and compassion, you can empathize with the plight of every other member of humanity. And that benefits the relationship, and it benefits the self. There's a lot of peace in that level of compassion, love, and empathy. But it begins with wondering about yourself. Take a nice, slow, deep breath. Hold as you peak, sense the fullness, and now as you exhale, relax even more and open your eyes wide awake and alert, rested and refreshed and back in the room, feeling fine, better than before.
Yeah, and being better than before is sort of the goal here, and the way to find that out is to ask questions. I think the place to start is with yourself and the basic W's. Who is important to me? What is important to me? Where is important to me? And then I think a fascinating one, when is important to me? Am I living in the past with regret and remorse? Am I living in the future with worry? Or am I living a little bit in the future with dreams and plans and mostly in the now? When is important to me? And then why is this all important to me? Why is understanding myself important to me? And then I guess maybe the most important question in this string comes down to, now how am I going to use this information? What am I going to, now that I know this about myself, how am I going to use this information? Great questions to ask yourself, but again, only in paradise. You know, when you got stuff going on, when there's too much happening, you can't get the real answers to those questions. You got to get quiet, let your mind know you're safe. Survival's not an issue right now. What's an issue here is fulfillment. And so let's go find out what really matters by asking the big questions and listening for the answer.
Well, thanks a lot for being with us. Hope you're enjoying this series of personal empowerment programs at Finding Yourself in Paradise. And we'll look for you next week. As always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.